Welcome, everybody. Let's get started this evening. We have a big crowd. I'm Gretchen Hochmeister, the Executive Director of the Hotchkiss Library of Sharon, and along with my co-sponsors this evening, Ann Thompson of the Essex Public Library and Kathleen Millard of the Darien Library, I'm so happy to welcome you here this evening. We have attendees from all over Connecticut as a result of our collaboration. Please note that because of the large number of participants, your microphones are muted. So please send us your questions through the chat function in Zoom, and we will read them to Lisa and Bruce after their initial conversation. This evening, we have the added bonus of having Bruce Weinstein with us. He will be in conversation with Lisa. He's the best-selling co-author of more than 36 cookbooks, including the best-selling Instant Pot Bible with Mark Scarborough, another great friend of our library. Their latest is the Instant Pot Bible, Copycat Recipes. You can see the jacket here on the screen. They also teach online classes and have a fabulous cooking podcast, which I recommend to all of you. In addition, Bruce is a talented knitter who has published his patterns and designs. You can read about all of these endeavors, all of the work they do on their website, cookingwithbruceandmark.com. So thank you so much, Bruce, for joining us and helping us out tonight. Lisa Steele is a fifth-generation chicken keeper and founder of the popular blog Fresh Eggs Daily. She's referred to as the Queen of the Coop. Lisa traded in her life on Wall Street for life on a farm in rural Maine, where she keeps chickens for more than a dozen years, or where she has kept chickens for more than a dozen years. Having written a number of books on raising and caring for chickens, she's a trusted source for all things chicken and egg. She's also a Maine master gardener. Lisa has hosted 2 seasons of the television show Welcome to My Farm on NBC in Maine. This award-winning country lifestyle show is coming to American public television and will be airing nationwide beginning next month. I'm sure we'll all learn a lot this evening as Bruce and Lisa discuss her latest book, the Fresh Eggs Daily Cookbook. All right, Bruce, take it away. Why don't we show these slides first? We have 5 pictures from some of the recipes in the book. So we'll take a look. Lisa, is that the asparagus omelet?
This is the asparagus and Parmesan omelet. Yes, it's perfect for spring when your asparagus starts coming up. I love it. I leave the asparagus raw, so it's nice and crunchy. This is a broccoli cheddar tart that I make in a rectangular pan, but you can make it in a square pan, but I like the way the rectangular pan cuts it into little bars. And that is egg lemon soup with rice. Great for this time of year. We're all still freezing cold, but the citrus is so nice with the egg and the lemon rice. These are puffy eggs. They're just eggs baked in a circle of puff pastry, just for kind of a little bit of a different breakfast option. And this is rhubarb clafouti, which is normally made with cherries, but those of us in the Northeast who can grow rhubarb, it's something else to make with your rhubarb other than a strawberry rhubarb pie.
Delicious, thank you.
I had the pleasure of interviewing Lisa for my podcast, Cooking with Bruce and Mark. And if you missed that, you want to go back and listen to our conversation there. It's episode 98 of Cooking with Bruce and Mark. And I'm thrilled to speak with Lisa again tonight about her new book, your new book, Lisa, Fresh Eggs Daily Cookbook. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, it's good to see you. It has been a while.
So, Lisa, I want to start just by saying that so many of us have reinvented ourselves halfway through our career. You went from Wall Street to raising chickens and cooking with eggs. What did that transition look like?
I think it was something that I couldn't have avoided because I grew up in a very rural area raising chickens. My grandparents raised chickens. It was something I was super comfortable with. And after I went to college and went to work on Wall Street, it was fun. It was in my 20s. It was energetic, and it was the 80s. So, I mean, Wall Street was pretty crazy back then. But, you know, I burned out really quickly because the lifestyle wasn't something that I really was comfortable with. And I never never really fully adapted to it. So it feels much more comfortable now to just, be wearing jeans and flannel shirts and collecting eggs and gardening, all that kind of stuff.
So you live in Maine on a farm, and how many chickens do you have at any given time, and how many eggs does that translate into?
For a while now, we've had about a dozen chickens. We've had as many as almost 3 dozen. It's a lot. I get really stressed. It's really hard to remember that many names. And you get way too many eggs because you get about an egg a day from each chicken, not every day and not year round, but about an egg. And just
Gretchen, we've lost Lisa's sound.
Are you there, Lisa?
unmute.
There you go.
There you go.
I
I
can
muted for some reason.
So Lisa, I'm gonna jump right in,
can
and
hear
I
you.
gotta say something. You name all of your chickens.
We can hear you, Lisa.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now
Yes.
we hear you.
Oh, that was weird. Technology. It just kept muting me and saying that the host wouldn't let me unmute.
So I want to jump in and say, you name all of your chickens.
Yes. How would I talk to them otherwise?
Wow. I don't know that I could tell all those chickens apart. So when we talked on my podcast, you gave me the best tip ever about buying eggs. You said there's a secret code that no one knows about in the cartons. Tell everybody about that.
Yes. When you go to the grocery store, on the end of a carton, it will say sell by or use by or best by, and there's a date. And you can pretty much ignore that because it's pretty arbitrary. What you really want to look for is the 3-digit code, probably right around where it says that best by. It goes from 001 to 365, and that corresponds to the day of the year. So today is like what, March 3rd. So it's probably like 30, 60. We're probably around like day 60 or so of the year. You want to look for the number that's closest to the day you're buying the eggs, because that means that's the day the eggs were put in that carton. So you can tell that you're getting the freshest eggs.
That was the best thing I'd ever heard. And just as you said, you get stared at by digging through at the store. Now I get stared at because I'm piling through all the cartons looking for the lowest number there is.
That's funny. And it varies. You'll see that there is a variation. There definitely are some fresher eggs on the shelves.
There are. So now we know how to get the freshest eggs that are there. But
Mhm.
you also say that it's probably easier to get even fresher eggs at a local farm stand or farmer's market. So why are fresher eggs better?
Really, anything that's fresher is going to be better. Surprisingly, though, an egg does not seem to lose much of its nutrition as it ages. I haven't really found anything that definitively says that it loses its nutrition. So nutrition-wise, you're probably the same if you're eating fresh eggs or old eggs. But when you try to work with them, if you ever try to fry an old egg and you crack it into your pan, it just spreads all over the place, and you're using your spatula to try to keep it all around the yolk. A super fresh egg, when you drop it in the pan, the white is so thick, it's going to stay right there. So frying eggs fresh is super important. And when you're poaching eggs also, when you really want that white to stay in a nice ball with the yolk, a fresh egg is going to poach so much nicer.
So what about boiled eggs? Does freshness make a difference when you're hard boiling an egg?
That's actually the one place where people claim that it's better to use old eggs because fresh eggs don't peel well. Time has not allowed air to get into the egg and push the membrane away from the shell, so fresh eggs are hard to peel. But letting eggs get old really isn't a great answer. So instead, which I share in my cookbook, I steam my eggs over simmering water. So I put them in a colander or a vegetable steamer or something like that, steam them for 12 minutes, and then put them into ice water. And eggs laid that morning peel perfectly. It's like magic. I'm sure there's some science behind it, but it's just like magic.
So we should all be steaming our hard-boiled eggs rather than boiling them.
I haven't boiled eggs in a decade. And the other benefit, sometimes when you boil eggs, you know how they knock against each other and they crack and then the whites fall out and you've got egg all over. When they're steaming, they're just sitting so nicely and quietly in the basket. They're not banging into each other. They don't crack, they don't break.
So people are afraid of egg yolks. I know a lot of people are afraid of them. But when we talked last time, you were telling me we shouldn't be afraid. We need to eat the whole egg and stop ordering the egg white omelets. Why is that?
The yolk does have all the fat and cholesterol in the egg, but it also has the overwhelming majority of nutrients, all of the great vitamins and all the good stuff in the egg. The white really is just protein. There's not a whole lot else in there. It's a lot of water, a lot of protein. The yolk also has all the flavor. So, if you're just eating egg whites for breakfast, you're really missing out. You definitely should be eating the whole egg. I mean, you should talk to your doctor. There are people that have cholesterol problems, but for the most part, they've found that dietary cholesterol really does not affect a body's cholesterol.
So you had told me that you also raise ducks, and we talked a bit about duck eggs, and I know they're bigger than chicken eggs. And personally, I love the texture and flavor of duck eggs. But because they're larger, I don't use them in baking. But can I substitute a duck egg in baking? And if so, how do I do that? And what about tiny quail eggs? I mean, how do I substitute eggs from other birds in my baking?
You absolutely should. You should be baking with your duck or your goose eggs because they are higher in fat. So they're going to make your baked goods fluffier. They're going to make them rise better. They're just going to taste richer. So the ratio, if you're one of those people who weighs your flour when you bake, you're probably also weighing your eggs. So you could, weigh out, you could crack the eggs into a bowl and then weigh them out. But really, 3 chicken eggs equals 2 duck eggs or 1 goose egg. So if your recipe calls for 6 eggs, you could just use 3 duck eggs or 2 goose eggs. Quail eggs, I don't know the ratio offhand, but I mean, quail eggs are teeny. So you're talking a lot of quail eggs to equal 1 chicken egg. But a chicken egg is about 3 tablespoons of liquid.
Okay.
So if you really, want to just kind of whisk up some egg and then measure it out, you can use any kind of eggs. You can use turkey eggs. If you had emu eggs, I guess you could use those.
Wow.
Ostrich egg.
Get those.
I don't know.
So before I went through your book, Fresh Eggs Daily Cookbook, I always saw fried eggs as just fried eggs. And then you have some really great ideas. You dollop the yolk with apricot jam in one recipe. You fry the eggs in olive oil with thin lemon slices in another recipe. But the one that I want you to talk about is you fry eggs in heavy cream. How does that work?
Yeah, that was one of those recipes that sort of necessity is the mother of invention. Went to fry an egg, didn't have any butter. I only had olive oil, and I find that kind of heavy for frying eggs because eggs just have such a delicate flavor. So I don't like using olive oil. But I had some heavy cream and I thought, well, that's a fat. So I could probably fry the egg in the heavy cream. Sure enough, you can. You just put a thin layer just so it covers your pan, crack your eggs into it. And as it heats up and cooks, the heavy cream separates into the milk solids and butter fats, and things start to caramelize, and the whites get super, super smooth and creamy and rich. It's really beautiful. It's a great way to use up that last little bit of heavy cream too.
I think everyone's going to be doing that. So you also say in your book, never to salt eggs before you cook them. Why not?
Salt, again, it's all magic science stuff that I don't totally understand, but salt breaks down the protein bonds. So if you like super soft eggs, you can salt them before you cook them. Like when you're whisking them, you could add some salt, but it will break the protein bonds down. So you really should salt when the eggs are done cooking. You definitely don't want to salt while the eggs are cooking because it draws out moisture. Just like when you have tomatoes from the garden or cucumber slices and you want to get the moisture out of them, you salt them. It's going to do the same thing to your eggs.
People don't know what Scotch eggs are. They're a boiled egg wrapped in a sausage and deep fried. And while I love them, I often think that the eggs inside tend to get overcooked. But the photo you have in the book with your recipe, it's cut open. Eggs are so runny and beautiful. What's the secret of that?
That's interesting because I had never heard of Scotch eggs until a friend from the UK came over and she showed me her recipe. She actually sells them during the holidays. She has like a little cottage business and she has a bunch of different flavors and everything. So she showed me how to make them. Of course, I was writing the recipe down and yeah, she did a 6-minute egg. So the egg is basically soft boiled. It's a little tricky when you're trying to wrap the pork mixture around a soft boiled egg because, it's not solid in the middle there. But if you do get it and you get it all encased, you're right. It ends up with a nice runny yolk. A lot of the recipes I looked at online afterwards, they did use a hard boiled egg inside, and that didn't really appeal to me.
No, it's what keeps me away from Scotch eggs, except your recipe, which looked amazing. Eggs for dinner. Your book is full of ideas for eggs for dinner, but it's more than just having breakfast for dinner. It's not just always scrambled eggs. So I want you to talk about a recipe that we talked about on my podcast, which is the egg yolk ravioli, because
Oh, yeah.
it's amazing.
That is a great one. And it's super easy yes, pretty. You can make your own pasta dough and roll it out into sheets and cut it out. But I use wonton wrappers or egg roll wrappers and a cookie cutter or a biscuit cutter. And you just cut out your circles. And then you mix your ricotta and your mozzarella cheese, put it in the middle and make a little nest for your egg yolk, raw egg yolks. Put your top on, seal it all up, and then you just, cook them for a minute or two like you would fresh pasta dough. And you get this beautiful egg yolk ravioli where you can see the yolk, and the yolk is still runny because it hasn't cooked very long. Really nice. I do it on a bed of marinara, but you also, which I really love, is mixing some pumpkin puree into the ricotta and making pumpkin ravioli that way.
And if people like firmer egg yolks, just cook the ravioli another minute.
Yes, I had somebody review the book, and overwhelmingly the reviews have been really good. I've been really happy with them. But one woman reviewed it and said that the too many recipes featured runny egg yolks, and I was like, well, just cook the egg a little bit longer then. Most of the recipes
Follow
you can
recipes,
adapt.
though. People follow recipes, and that's, I think it's good to let them know that if you like it a little more, it won't hurt the
Just
recipe.
cook it a little longer.
Cook it a little longer. So one
Right.
of the most unusual uses of eggs ever is pizza topped with eggs. And I've seen pizza topped with eggs in high-end pizza places, but you have a recipe in your book to do it at home. And it's a two-step process. So explain why it's a two-step process and how that works and why it's so good.
Yeah, I really love that. And again, you can use store-bought pizza dough. You don't have to make your own pizza dough, but you get your dough all rolled out. And I use bacon on it because we're doing kind of a breakfast for dinner type pizza. But you could put anything you wanted on your pizza, but then you have to bake it because your eggs are not going to take that long to cook. Your pizza is going to take longer. So you got to, cook your pizza first, pre-cook it, I guess. And then you drop your eggs into your pizza, finish off the cooking. I love that one. It could be for dinner, but you could also have it for breakfast. There's nothing wrong with breakfast pizza.
So you just pull the pizza out of the oven, crack an egg right on top of it, and shove it back in the oven.
Put it back in. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that sounds absolutely fabulous. So I want to talk for a minute about your PBS show. So the show, the name of the show is Welcome to My Farm, and this is run in Maine, and now it's been re-edited as a whole season, and it's going to be in PBS stations all over the country, and I believe Connecticut's getting it. So tell me what happens in your show.
Yeah, so I started doing it, I guess, about 4 years ago locally here in Maine. We filmed 2 seasons, which ran on NBC on Sunday mornings. Fun little show. It's basically 3 segments: a chicken keeping segment, a gardening segment, and a cooking segment. Sometimes I go somewhere like to a Christmas tree farm or a strawberry farm or something like that and try to have a theme. It's kind of like a day in the life with me, like hanging out with me and doing stuff that I do, naturally on television. But I didn't really want to do another season. It was only here in Maine. And I was fortunate enough to be contacted by public television, and they wanted to put it on public television. So over 200 stations nationwide will be carrying it in starting April 1st. I hope they can put a link down in the show notes here, because there will be a zip code locator where you can put your zip code in to see what station it's on, what time and what day and all that. But yeah, the 13 seasons that we had, or the 13 episodes we had for the first 2 seasons, have been reworked and remastered and made into one great brand new season. So I hope everybody will watch. It's very Maine based, seasonal. So I think people from Connecticut will enjoy it, because it's definitely got a New England flavor to it.
Do you do any cooking in the show?
Mhm.
And
Yes,
what-
I do. In fact, a lot of the recipes from the cookbook, believe it or not,
That's
ended
so
up in the show.
That's so great. And tips about raising chickens. And so we watch the show. Everyone's going to want to run out and buy some chickens.
I hope so. Yes.
Hey, Gretchen, I think there's some questions we want to get to.
I don't see any questions yet, but please put
Hey,
them.
if anyone has any questions for Lisa, or for me, about cooking with eggs, with raising chickens, ask away. We're both here and happy to answer them. So Lisa, you said that it surprises you with the book that people are so into the raising of the chickens, and that you really thought, here you have this fabulous new cookbook about eggs. And while the recipes are amazing, so many people are interested in chickens. Well, what do you think that is?
Yeah, that's really interesting to me. I felt like the introduction was really long. I had originally written like a page and a half introduction, like a normal book. And my editor came back to me and said, I want you to expand upon this. So I wrote basically everything I know about eggs, a little mini memoir, and I just kind of went nuts with it. And that seems to be what people are focusing on. I think because I'm reaching a bigger audience. I was really just reaching chicken people before, who had followed me for years, probably have had chickens as long as I have. And now with this book, it's reaching more people, and maybe people who don't have chickens or weren't following me, or maybe thought about having chickens. So it's interesting to me that that's kind of what people are focusing on. I see some questions now. People are asking questions.
I see them, and I want to, while we were talking about cooking and baking, I want to ask, Carrie Bachman wants to know any tips on baking. Should eggs always be at room temperature, or should they be cold when you're baking?
No, that's a good question. Ingredient temperatures matter. So if your recipe says use cold milk, use cold milk. If it says use chilled butter, make sure your butter's cold. Same with eggs. If it says room temperature, there's a reason, because you're incorporating them into a batter or a dough. And if they're not the same temperature, the fats are going to seize up. So it is really important. If it does say cold eggs, use cold eggs. If it says, room temperature, let them come up to room temperature. One nice thing about raising your own chickens is you don't have to refrigerate fresh eggs. So I can leave mine out on the counter. So I always have room temperature eggs for baking.
All right, now you have to explain that. So why is it that eggs from the supermarket have to be refrigerated, but eggs straight from the farm don't?
Straight from the chicken. The United States is one of the few countries in the world where eggs that are sold commercially have to be washed before they can be sold. And that's really a shame, because eggs come with a natural coating called the bloom that protects the egg from bacteria getting in, from air getting in, from the egg losing its moisture. And in this country, they have to wash commercially sold eggs. So you're taking away the egg's natural ability to stay fresh. So they have to be refrigerated. But our eggs, or if you buy from a farmer's market, you can leave them out on the counter, because they have that coating on them that is what protects the egg. That's what it's there for.
Speaking of protecting, Susan wants to know, how do you protect your chicks from predators?
I lock them in a coop that is like Fort Knox. They have a run that's made out of welded wire on top, wire sunk into the ground. In Connecticut, you have the same type predators we do: bobcats, fisher cats, coyotes, fox. I mean, everything wants to eat chickens. So it's just a matter of being vigilant. I have solar predator lights around. I do anything I can think of to keep them safe.
And what is, Suzanne wants to know, what is the source of your flock?
Where do I get them from?
Yep.
I get them from Meyer Hatchery in Ohio. is usually where I get them from. I've hatched a lot of my own hatching eggs in previous years, but most recently, most of them have come from Meyer Hatchery.
And Sophia wants to know, how many chickens would you recommend for a first-time chicken owner? And can you recommend a resource on how to get started?
Yes, I'd say 5 or 6. It's a great starting flock size. You're going to get probably 4 or 5 eggs a day, which is going to be a nice number on a daily basis for like a family of 4. Again, Meyer Hatchery is who I use. They're in Ohio. They ship nationwide. You can also go to your local feed store. I know there are Blue Seal feed stores in Connecticut. There's Tractor Supply. There's all kinds of feed stores where you can get your baby chicks in the spring. They should start having them soon.
And Gretchen is asking, is there a breed of chicken you most recommend for a new chicken keeper? She says, we once had Aracuna chickens that we loved for their blue-green eggs, but what's your advice?
If you can get 5 or 6 chickens, get 5 or 6 different breeds. I wouldn't get just one breed because it's hard to tell them apart, and they have names, so it's hard to call them by the right name if they all look the same. But no, it's fun to have a chicken that lays a blue egg and one that lays a green egg and a brown egg, and that's part of the fun of it. I do like Australorps. They are Australian Orpingtons, solid black chickens, great layers, large brown eggs, good moms, super friendly. So if I could only pick one breed, I would choose the Australorp.
And Bart Klein has interesting questions. We talked about refrigerating eggs after they've been washed. So how do you clean a soiled egg if you're not washing it?
During mud season, especially here in the spring, the eggs do get pretty muddy. So if I do bring eggs in and they do need to be washed, I just rinse them under warm water and then I do refrigerate those.
Okay,
Otherwise, I don't wash them until just before using them.
so even if it's soiled, you let it be until you're going to use it.
No, if they're muddy or dirty or have poop on them or whatever, I do rinse them in warm water, but then they do have to be refrigerated.
So the only eggs you'll keep at room temperature are the ones that sort of come out clean.
Come out clean, right?
So the Whitney wants to know, are you worried about the avian flu, that it'll go worldwide? It's in 12 states. Does it concern you?
I mean, it already technically is worldwide. The UK has been locked down almost forever, I think. They're not allowed to let their chickens outside. It's super concerning because there's no cure and it's almost always fatal. So if, your flock gets it, you're supposed to report it to your state. And I know a lot of people have said, well, why would I report it? Because they will come and euthanize your flock, but they're not going to make it anyway. So it is really scary. And I think the scary part is that people don't take it seriously and don't realize how easy it is to spread from flock to flock or from wild birds to flock, or, people will go to swaps or poultry shows and they'll bring in adult birds to their flock. You have to be careful about that. There's a lot of infectious diseases that chickens can get. So if everybody's just super careful, if you're going to bring in new chickens, make sure they're baby chicks because they're naturally quarantined. Keep your flock under a run that has tarps on top or a solid roof so wild birds can't get in. And hopefully we can nip it in the bud. Usually it's in the winter or during migration season. And hopefully once spring comes, it'll just naturally work itself through and be gone, I hope.
A cooking question from Karen. Are there any poached egg recipes in your book? And let me just ask you, what do you think is the perfect way to poach an egg? Because everyone's got their trick.
Yeah, everyone does. And really, I think the easiest thing to do is just bring your water to a nice gentle simmer. Use a fresh egg, because like I mentioned before, you really want an egg with a nice thick white. And then I just use the handle of a wooden spoon to make a whirlpool, slide the egg into the whirlpool, and as it spins, the white just naturally kind of envelops the yolk. So I don't put any vinegar or baking soda or salt or anything in the water. The whirlpool works really well. There are some recipes for poached eggs, the eggs Benedict on top, but also, there's recipes where it might call for a fried egg and you could just as easily poach an egg if that's the way you like to make your eggs.
And do you really eat eggs every day?
I do. What else would I eat? I mean, honestly, probably. I mean, in some way, shape, or form. It's hard to find a recipe that doesn't include eggs, honestly. So
So Whitney also says that we had our chicken's eggs the other night and a couple of them had a blood spot on the yolk. Are they still safe to eat? We tossed them out because we didn't know.
Yeah, they are. I mean, if I crack one open and it has a blood spot in it, I usually just give it to the chickens, but that's just a broken blood vessel. It doesn't mean that the egg is fertile or is not a baby chick. It's just a blood vessel that broke when the egg was being formed. So it's perfectly safe to eat. You can try to pick it out if you want to, or you can just scramble it up and pretend it was never there.
That's good to know. Any more questions? Gretchen, do you have anything you want to add?
There's a comment here from Paula. I don't think you saw this one. I have an old Sodder's egg carton with the following code, and she typed the code. It's P1380 space 299 space E space 207. Does the 3-digit number represent the date?
I'm guessing if it's a really old carton, maybe that was before. I don't know when they started doing the secret code. So I'm thinking that was before they started doing it.
Yeah, it would be hard to know on that whether it's the 299 or the 207.
Right.
Because all the ones,
Mhm.
since I started looking, it's just 3 digits. It's not a whole bunch of other
Okay.
numbers.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll put a plug in, Lisa, for your method of shaking the eggs in a mason jar before you scramble them. I was craving scrambled eggs yesterday, so I opened up your book to see what tips you had, and they were so delicious. You know, I cracked 2 eggs into the mason jar, I screwed the lid on, I shook them for, I don't know, 30 or 45 seconds really hard. You said till they get foamy or bubbly.
Mhm.
And then I followed your instructions perfectly, and I was really gentle with the spatula, just moving them in, and they were so nice and fluffy. They were really good. So I recommend that to everyone. It was better than whisking.
Oh,
All
and
right.
I don't necessarily think it is. I think that you just shake it longer. Like if you
Okay.
whisked them for 40 seconds,
It would work.
probably would do the same thing. But I think the fact that you have them in the jar and you look at it, yeah.
Right.
So Lisa, Crane is questioning, you give eggs to your chickens, you feed your chickens eggs? Cool.
Correct.
And
Yes.
do they get the shells too? Do they get calcium from the
Yes.
shells?
Yes, they do.
And-
Yeah, eggs are
and-
a great treat. I mean, they're super nutritious.
Yeah. So Anne at the Essex Library asked you to please settle the argument about scrambled eggs. So do we add cream, milk, or water or anything to the egg, or is it just the egg?
I don't add anything to them. I think if you add anything, it just makes them watery. And I think, like was just mentioned, if you whisk them up really, really well or shake them up really well, get a lot of air into them, they're going to be super fluffy. They're not going to need anything. And if you are eating fresh eggs, I think they're so tasty that I don't even salt or pepper them. You know, it's
So-
just the egg and some butter and I'm good.
You and I talked about this in the past about brown versus white. Does one mean the egg is fresher? Is there any difference between getting a brown egg or a white egg? Is one better or one fresher than the other?
No, it's interesting that all eggshells start out white. So when the chicken starts to lay the egg, the shell she puts around it is white. And then depending on the breed, some breeds have brown pigment, some breeds have blue pigment, and they apply that pigment to the shell. If you're there when your chicken lays the egg, sometimes it's still wet, like it'll rub off. The color will rub off if you catch her in time. So yeah, they're all the same on the inside. The nutrition depends on what the hen's eating. And of course, the taste depends on what she's eating and how fresh the egg is.
And Karen wants to know, what is your favorite way to eat eggs?
Eggs Benedict, the one that landed on the cover, although that wasn't my choice. But if I could only eat eggs one way the rest of my life, it would be Eggs Benedict.
So Whitney's going back to the feeding the chickens eggs question. So if you're feeding your chickens, do you feed them raw egg or do you cook the eggs? You feed them raw eggs, and
Either or, both. Yep. No, I don't worry. Before a chick hatches, the last thing it does is it ingests the yolk of the egg that it's in, and that is all the nutrition it needs for like the first 2 or 3 days. So chickens are basically born cannibals, I guess you want to call it. But yeah, people say that if you feed your chickens eggs, it causes them to eat the eggs. I've had chickens for 12 years and I've never had a problem. Usually I do cook the eggs, I'll scramble them up And usually I crush the shells, I dry them, I crush them up, I put them in a little dispenser. But occasionally, I break an egg by accident in my pocket in the run, and I just throw it to them raw with the shell. I think if you're giving your chickens what they need as far as nutrition and calcium and protein and all that, they don't go looking for it. So I've never had a problem with unauthorized egg eating.
That's great. So Anne also says, what's the lifespan of a home-raised chicken?
Realistically, like 3 years. But chickens in optimal conditions can live 10 to 12 years old. We had the oldest we've had is 9+, like heading towards 10 years old and just, dying of old age. But sadly, predators are just, they're tough. It's tough to keep the chickens safe.
And remind us again the name of your PBS show.
Oh, it's called Welcome to My Farm.
And Sandra says, when you're making a frittata, how do you keep it from getting tough?
Overcooking it, I guess. I think a lot of people do tend to overcook their eggs. Eggs cook so fast that you really have to kind of take them out of the oven or off the burner when they still kind of look like they're not 100% set, or they are going to end up just being dried out tough.
I agree with you. It's very easy to overcook an egg, and slightly undercooked is when they taste the best anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite way of, sorry, Bruce, do you have
Well,
a
I was just gonna say this, any more questions, and this is making me hungry.
I'm sorry. Do you have a favorite deviled egg recipe or egg salad recipe? Those are two of my favorite ways to eat eggs.
I do, and I have recipes for both in the book. I like adding a little bit of lemon to my egg salad. I think it brightens it up and just kind of gives it a little bit different flavor. Also, you can add some avocado, make it nice and creamy, a little more hearty. As far as deviled eggs, there is a recipe in my book where I sort of make pickled eggs, but I made them in a turmeric liquid, so the white turns yellow on the outside. And then I made those into deviled eggs, and I thought that was really pretty because the yellow outside of the white matches the yolk. So they're really fancy. Deviled eggs are so funny because if you bring them somewhere, people love them. I've never brought them anywhere and brought any home. They always go first, like if you're at a potluck or something. So they're a really good choice to bring, and they travel pretty well.
People love deviled eggs. I love that idea of pickling them with turmeric. And so the color seeps through the shell. And does the entire white get yellow, or just sort of the outside? And
no, so it wasn't like Easter eggs. I peeled them and then put them in the liquid. So the white really did absorb.
cool.
People do it with beets a lot. And I was looking at recipes, and I don't love a bright pink egg. I thought the yellow would be a little nicer color.
Somebody has commented that hard-boiled eggs in the Instant Pot are really easy to peel. And I can say, yes, I learned that from Bruce and Mark's first Instant Pot book, actually.
Yes.
Yes, I have heard that too. I have to apologize. I don't have an Instant Pot. So for those of people who do, you can try that.
Yeah, and they peel so easily. It's amazing.
They do.
Because they are being steamed, correct? Isn't that how
Well,
it
and that
works?
is,
Kind of, yeah.
in the end, Lisa, that is what's happening. They're sitting on a rack above the water, and it's steam under pressure. So in the end, when you cook in the Instant Pot, we're doing just what you recommended, which is let's just steam our eggs.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it.
Any more questions? Any favorite egg or chicken memories or recipes or suggestions? Do you eat a lot of chicken, Lisa? No?
I don't,
eat principle.
yeah, no, chickens are your friends. They're not food. No, and I mean, I'm certainly not a vegetarian, but chicken never was my first choice. I would much rather have a leg of lamb or a really nice T-bone. I think chicken, you have to do a lot too to make it taste good. So there are other things I would choose before chicken, and especially now.
Not to be morbid, but what happens to your layers when they're done laying?
They run around and eat bugs and poop. And
They just live out the rest of their natural life on the farm.
Mhm. And then
That's
we bury them and we put a little marker, and that's that.
Purdy says, any recommendations for letting a hen in your flock hatch her eggs?
Mhm. Yes, if you're lucky enough to have a rooster, well, that's not really being lucky, but if you have a rooster and you're lucky enough to get a hen in the spring who wants to sit on everybody's eggs, you can let her, and she'll do everything. She turns them, she keeps them warm, she sits on them, they hatch, and then I separate her usually because I don't want the, the little ones in with the big ones. But yeah, it all happens out in the coop. You don't even have to worry about it. It's really a fun experience.
Susan asks, do your chicks graze or stay in one location? She's assuming the latter due to predator concerns.
Well, now that we're both home, my husband's retired and I work from home, we have a dog. So I was letting them out to free range a lot more than, I used to when there wasn't everybody home all day. But now with the avian flu, they're back being in the pen, and there's snow on the ground anyway, so they don't really want to come out. But hopefully in the summer, I do like to let them out as much as possible. They love it. If you're outside, if you're washing the car or gardening or having a barbecue, it's a nice time to let the chickens out when you can be out there watching them.
Anne wants to know the names of your chickens. Now, you've got 36 chickens, you said?
No, that's what we had before in Virginia. I think we have 18 now.
Do you remember
So-
all 18 names?
I'll do my best. So we have Sherman the rooster. We have Charlotte. We have 2 baby violets because we have a violet and an understudy, sort of a body double. I have Abigail, Amy, Abigail Adams and Amy Adams. I have Molly, Mean Kate. See, now you're gonna catch me in a lie, but I do know they all do have names. Oh, Sage, Ophelia. I'm trying to picture them all. I mean, if they were all standing here, it would be easier because I could see who I was missing. I promise you, they do all have names, though. That was 10. Oh, Virginia, it's 11. Who am I missing?
Okay, but I'm going to jump in and say, because Barb wants to know, do your chickens know their names? Do they learn their names? They don't. Okay.
Well, I don't think so. Our geese do. Geese are super smart. I think our geese know their names, but I don't think the chickens do. I mean, they come when you call them because they know you have treats, but I don't think they actually learn their names.
And
People might
think
say they
know
do,
you?
but
Do you think they know the difference between you and a different human?
yes, they do. They've studied that chickens can identify, I believe, up to 100 different beings. They recognize like their friends or their flock members by their shapes. And they have studied and proven that chickens do recognize each other. They recognize you. So yes, they know who I am.
That's the most important thing because you're the one.
Mhm. Right.
Can you say anything about urban chicken keeping? Is it becoming more popular in urban areas like beekeeping?
It is, and it's really good that it is because chickens are small. If you don't have a rooster, which a lot of urban areas don't allow roosters because of the crowing, hens still are kind of loud, but most areas, I guess, haven't figured that out when they changed the laws. But you really only need a space maybe as big as a doghouse for, say, 4 or 5 chickens. And then a small pen, maybe as big as like one of those dog kennels. So if you can have a dog in your backyard or a garden apartment area, you can definitely have chickens. They don't take up that much space at all.
Do you happen to have a chicken named Miranda?
Oh, I do. Yes, that's the one I forgot.
Somebody
I have
named
Miranda.
I'm psychic. Actually, I'm not. Somebody named Whitney typed it in the chat.
Now I feel terrible. Yes, I have a Miranda and I have a Miranda understudy as well. So we're up to 13 now.
Very funny.
And
See, they know their names.
how do you encourage chickens to lay during the winter? Do you use light or you can't?
I don't, because I've just heard from too many people over the years with problems with their chickens' reproductive systems. And, you're forcing them to lay like the commercial chicken farms do. And I feel like if I'm going to leave a light on all winter and force my chickens to lay through the winter, then I'm really no better than a commercial farmer. And I might as well just be buying my eggs at the store. They're taking a winter break. They're using their energy to stay warm. They've just grown in new feathers, which takes a lot of energy from them. So I would rather have them take a break. I'll eat oatmeal. That's fine. And then they can start back up in the spring. Plus, I mean, around here and in Connecticut too, it's cold. So if you have chickens laying all winter, there's a good chance a lot of the eggs are going to freeze before you can get to them.
That's a good point. And there's nothing worse than frozen eggs.
No, because they crack and then you're like, I probably shouldn't eat this one.
If there was one recipe in the book that you wished everyone would go home and cook this evening or tomorrow, what would you like everybody to try?
Oh, that's a really good question. The one that people seem fascinated with is the eggs cooked in butternut squash rings, which I really love.
Yeah.
See, we're psychic. And that's a super easy one. Like, I don't care if you say you don't cook or whatever. If you have a pan, a sheet pan, get yourself a squash, doesn't even have to be butternut, and just bake some eggs in the squash rings.
So Marianne asks, have you ever had Icelandic chickens?
No, I haven't. And I've never had Swedish flour either. But those are two breeds that would be super well adapted to this area because they're really good cold hardy breeds.
And they're beautiful looking, the Icelandic ones. They're very
Yes, they are.
feathery and sort of ornate looking, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yes.
Barb says that Sheila's more urban. It's been a challenge to get municipalities to allow chickens. They need permits. Do you need permits or are you just rural? I mean, what do you need?
Yeah, nobody cares. When we were moving to Maine from Virginia, we were looking at houses online. And the first thing I would do when we would find a house, I would call the town and say, can I raise chickens? Because we had our chickens. I was going to bring them with us. And after the first couple towns, when they would say, I don't know, is there a law about that? Like, I mean, no, nobody cares what we do up here.
Yeah.
Cities are stupid.
Well, I don't know about that.
I mean, no, it's true. And what I find, because I do follow a lot of this, and even Bangor here, the city of Bangor, I think recently decided not to allow chickens. They had it go to vote. I think what happens is a lot of time the selectmen or the people that are on the board have bad memories because they grew up on a chicken farm or something like that. So they bring like these childhood memories with them and they don't want people to have chickens because they have horrible memories of it, which is sad.
Do you know if guinea hens get along with chickens?
Guinea hens are super loud, and I have some friends who raise them, and they were so mean to the chickens that they just let the guinea hens free range and sleep up in the trees because they're pretty fierce. I mean, it's going to take a lot to take down a guinea hen.
And how did you move your chickens from Virginia to Maine?
We had horses in Virginia that we weren't bringing with us. We didn't think they would like the changing climate, and one of them was really old. So we put the chickens and ducks in our horse trailer. We had straw on the floor of it, and we drove up in a caravan with all our stuff and our lawnmower and our tractor and everything. And the chickens and ducks lived in the horse trailer for a good couple of weeks, I guess, before we had our coop up. And it worked really well because it was metal. Nothing was getting into it. So it made a really nice temporary coop for them. But, we stopped. We did it all in one. It was like, I don't know, 900 miles or something, whatever it was. We did it all in one stretch. We just stopped for bathroom breaks and to give everybody water and check on them. I gave the chickens watermelon and cucumbers to eat on the way. They were fine.
Whitney's saying, how old was your oldest pekin? Was it Gregory?
Pekin. Yeah, our Pekin duck. He was 12. He had just turned 12 when we lost him, which is, it's a nice ripe old age. It's like having a grandfather duck, great grandfather duck.
Oh, that's an old duck.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What's your oldest animal now on the farm?
Our cat is 17, I believe. We rescued him as a kitten. I keep forgetting. I think he's 17.
And does the cat show interest in the chickens?
I think he finds them fast. You know how cats are weird? Like they go outside and play war games. Like when he was younger, he would hide behind trees and peek out or like jump out behind trees at the chickens. But now that he's older, he doesn't really pay attention to them.
Purdy says, can chickens and ducks live in the same coop or barn?
Yes. We've had our chickens and ducks together for years. It actually works out pretty well because the chickens roost on roosting bars and the ducks sleep on the floor. So we kind of have like a double decker type thing going. And then they share the pen, they eat the same food.
Well, Barb Klein says she's loving your book. She bought it for a friend and now she needs another one for herself. Thanks you for writing it. Whitney wants to know if the snowshoe hare is still hanging out in the coop.
I think a coyote ate him.
Oh.
The bunnies come and go, you know, the bunny population kind of grows and then it draws in the coyotes and then we don't see bunnies for a while and then they come back again. So yeah, I haven't seen the snowshoe rabbit this year.
Well, Dave and Marty have a Brahma Bootsy that lived to 11.
Wow.
And Crane Smith says, our cats have found out about beaks.
Yeah.
So that'll keep the cat away.
Yes.
Any more questions from anyone?
One from Tyne. Hey, Lisa, how does Winston the corgi get along with your flock?
He's really good. He was also a rescue, and we have to assume he never saw a chicken before we got him. And he's really good. He tried to herd the ducks for a while, but he gave up because the ducks would not be herded. So now he just basically hangs out down there trying to eat all the leftovers that we give to the chickens.
So cool. More than anybody has ever known about chickens.
Yeah, more than anyone ever wanted to know about chicken.
And so many amazing egg recipes. I thank you for writing this book. This is great.
Thank you.
It's a really terrific book. I don't know about everyone else. I had a little bit of dinner before, but I'm really hungry now.
Well, I hope everybody reserves a copy at their local library. Go to your local bookstore after you've gone to the library and decided you need to buy a copy.
That's right. This is our library copy, and I promise I will take it back in a day or two after I try a couple more recipes, and I will share it with others. And then I am going to order a copy for us. So thank you so much,
Nice.
Lisa and Bruce. It was really wonderful to have you both here. And I'm really looking forward to trying lots of recipes in the book. And thank you to our friends in Essex and Darien, to Anne and Kathleen for working on this program with us. And thank you to Carrie for having an idea to do this. And please be sure to support your local library, everybody, wherever you live, and check out our website and the website of our partner libraries and the website of your library at home to find out what other great programs they have coming up. So thank you all and good night and happy
Thank you.
cooking and chicken keeping.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.